Not going to play the fan today, but it is hot. We got the AC fixed. Um, Unfortunately, my grandmother actually prefers it to be kind of warm in the house. She thinks 76 degrees is cold. I'm not kidding. So I turned it up to 79 for her, so comfortable for her. It's gotten pretty hot because heat rises. So when you're in the uh, second story of the house, a little hot. Other than that, doing fine. Mrs. Contrarian had her party. If I can get her to live stream with us again, maybe she'll talk about it. But I have posted videos. I want everybody to go check those out when you get a chance. I have multiple videos up of the surprise birthday party for her at Jollibee's. There's a there's the video of her actually being surprised as they walk into the restaurant because she didn't know it was a surprise party. Then there's a video showing them, singing happy birthday to her, and they sing it differently there. And there's also pictures of the Jollibee mascot dancing, which you better dance because it costs a lot. So the Jollibee mascot dances, and then in another video, there is the Jollibee telling her sisters to get out because they were singing McDonald's, and he was like, "Get out, get out." I mean, it was all fun and games though, so it was cool. It was uh she had fun with it. So anyway, guys, that's not exactly the topic, but it is a fun topic because, like I said, I want to end the weekend on a fun note since um, I'm feeling happy with the wife having fun on her party. Okay, so a topic was addressed to me yesterday. Well, not a topic. Someone made a comment yesterday, and I decided to make it into a topic because Mrs. Contrarian actually gave me the suggestion for this topic, but it fits into the comment I got yesterday. So a newcomer to my channel was asking, "Why are you so fascinated with Star Wars?" And he said, "It's, you know," he said, "I think it's cool or whatever that you're into it," but he said it seems a bit cultish, which is just, you can tell this person is a millennial saying some shit like that. Because I told him, well, look, I was literally born in the Star Wars generation from 1977 to 1983, which is an actual generation, by the way, a hybrid generation that bridges Generation X and the millennial generation, since Gen X is from 1965 to 1980, and millennials are from 81 to 96. Yeah, 81 to 96. So they're called the Zennial generation, which is a hybrid micro generation that this this segmented between Gen X and millennials, because we have probably a closer bond within those few years than we have with either the larger Gen X generation or the larger millennial generation. I was born in '77, so the very year that Star Wars came out, and I was like, well, I was always into Star Wars because it was always around. My mother was into it, my father was into it, and I had the toys from the earliest. I watched all the original movies like on HBO or video or video, and then I got to see Return of the Jedi in its original theatrical release in '83. So it was one of the earliest movies I've seen. So yeah, I was completely into it. And I said even after the original trilogy, the the the, the franchise went on because there was the TV, the made for TV movies, the cartoons, the video games, the books, the comic books. And then in the late 90s came the prequel trilogy, right? And and then with that the Clone Wars uh, cartoon, and also from that a bunch of other stuff. So thank you, Wendy. I appreciate it. GJC is Star Trek is greater than Star Wars. I don't agree. I think people should stop comparing them because they're not rivals. Gene Roddenberry was actually a friend of George Lucas and actually gave him some seed money for Star Wars to be made. So I think I got that right. I think it was Gene Roddenberry helped George Lucas, not George Lucas helped Gene Roddenberry. Yeah, since Gene Roddenberry came out first with his TV show in the '60s, so there was never a rivalry between them. And if people have noticed, they've had Easter eggs in each other's properties. A very there was a fraction of a second Easter egg where the Millennium Falcon was in a Star Trek movie, and there was a Easter egg during a fraction of a second where the Star Trek Enterprise was in the Star Wars movie. But real fans will know that. That explains a lot, GJC. You obviously don't watch either, because I mean, some people are Trekkies, some people are Star Wars nerds, but most people can be both because they're not the same. Star Trek is science fiction. It's a um, Well, Star Wars is science fantasy. They're different, and like Star Wars is a space opera sort of thing. Star Trek isn't. Um, Wendy, oh, you're 1977 too. Okay, what's up? Okay, Wendy. But yeah, so um, the larger point I'm making, I know it sounds like I'm rambling, which I am a bit, but I'm driving to a trust me, I'm driving to a destination. So the point being that when this, with this guy Liam, that's his username, was saying it seems cultish, but he dug my fascination with Star Wars and all that. It gets to a larger point that older adults are healing themselves or spoiling their inner child, so to speak, with with things that were nostalgic to them when they were younger. A lot of Gen X, we were raised by our TVs. We were latchkey children. We usually were out of the house by during school. We let ourselves in after school. Our parents were still working. There was no one home but us. We kept ourselves busy by watching cartoons and after school TV programs and video games and TV shows and toys. That's how we like. It would probably be considered neglect now, but like yeah, when I was 8 years old, I was home by myself. So, but they didn't worry about me burning the house down or anything else. Sometimes I did cook, but it was usually microwave food. So I'm still here. So yeah, a lot of us older adults, Gen X mostly, and some older millennials as well. You know, we dig into these things that we loved as children because it's it's not we're not being infantile. It's just placating our inner childs, whether you want to call it healing or spoiling, whatever. By the way, like I said, this suggestion came from Mrs. Contrarian. GJC said I wanted to try Star Wars once, and my friend said start from number four. And then it goes back and forth, and timeline's too confusing. I don't know number four and what. Did he mean number four from the original series? Number four, the movie? That doesn't make any sense. See, I was into Simpsons, wrestling mob movies as well, but it's room for all of that. I was also into anime, also into like a bunch of stuff. I don't think you have to choose. It's whatever you find interesting. Um, but I don't know what you would. I don't know what your. I don't know what your friend was referring to when he said start from number four. Was he referring to start from the first movie? I mean, from the fourth movie, the Voyage Star Trek: The Voyage Home, because that wouldn't make sense. You would be literally lost in what's going on if you started from Star Trek Four, the movie. So I don't get that. Or is he saying the fourth series, which again wouldn't make sense because you wouldn't get anything going on in the fourth series, which was Star Trek Voyager, if you didn't watch the other one. So I don't get the number four thing. If he, like I said again, if he was talking about Star Trek, the original series, episode four, that wouldn't make sense. You should just watch it from the first pilot episode on. That's the way it's going to make sense. It's just doing it in a linear fashion. So, no, yeah, your friend sounds, I don't want to say dumb, but that doesn't make any damn sense. Why would you watch Star Trek 4, which is the voyage home? That doesn't make sense. You would have to know why they were traveling back in time in the first place. It just, first of all, you don't know the characters. And the fourth movie is part of a trilogy. Star Trek 2, I don't think if you ever saw my DVDs in my other place, but Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 are a trilogy, and you're not going to understand Star Trek 4 unless you watch 2 and 3. 2 is the Wrath of Khan, in which Spock dies saving the Enterprise from a guy who was stuck in time from the from actually the 20th the 21st century, and was in an episode on the original series, and so they used him and brought him back for the movies in Star Trek 2. Then Star Trek 3 is when they go to this planet that can regenerate life and find out that Spock's body was sent there, which brought him back to life there, and they abandoned all they they abandoned all military protocol and basically staged a coup just to go out there to this planet and rescue Spock. And for his the voyage home is when they rescue him. They return back to Earth to face court martial and what other else might happen for disobeying, um, the prime directive as well as um, disobeying military orders. But then find out that the Earth is being destroyed when they don't know why, and realize that whatever message this this anomaly was causing that was destroying the Earth was actually speaking in the language uh, whales. So they actually go back into time when the whales still existed to get whales to bring them back to their timeline to answer the call of this anomaly, this probe which was destroying the Earth. You wouldn't understand that unless you watched all the original movies. What's up, Mrs. Contrarian? What's up, Mahal? Oh, Star Wars fourth movie. I'm sorry. Yeah, so here's so I'm sorry, GJC. I thought you said Star Trek. So he's right. You do have to start with the fourth movie. What he doesn't, he's confusing you though. He should have just said start with the first movie made. The first movie is called episode 4, but you don't know that. It's just when it originally came out, it was just called Star Trek, and then when the other movies came out, then they changed the title to say Star Trek episode. I mean, excuse me, Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, because at one point George Lucas wanted to make the prequel movies 1, 2, and 3, but at the time he he didn't do that. So he just explained it to you wrongly. All he had to say was you need to watch the original trilogy first. All that calling it episode 4 and stuff, he he's not a very good he's not a very good explainer. That's the point. He 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 should have just said watch the first 3 movies made. That's it. He didn't have to call it episodes 4, 5, and 6, because that would obviously confuse any person who hasn't already been enmeshed in the Star Wars universe. So, but I apologize. J.A.C says, "Who's your favorite captain of Star Trek? Picard, Cisco, Janeway, or William Shatner?" You mean Captain Kirk? Yes, Picard, Cisco, Janeway, or Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk is my favorite because he's the first. Technically, Captain Pike is the first, but I'm not going to even get into that. Well, no, yeah, I might as well, because there's some people here who are Trekkies who understand what I'm saying. So technically, technically, Pike is the first captain, because what happened was I think this originally came on CBS. CBS had a pilot episode for Star Trek with Captain Pike and Spock, and um, a whole different slew of characters. And when they tested the pilot episode, they found that people found it too heady. Like they needed something more with a little bit more action, because they thought it was a little too conceptual for people and they might not be interested. So they retooled the show and then made first another pilot episode, but this time with everyone that we know now, with Captain Kirk, Spock, Yahora, Bone, Scotty, all of these folks. But what they did is they brought back the pilot episode as like a prequel episode to the original series. But um, and then also they added a second episode where they showed fast forward into the future, into Captain Kirk's time as the captain of the Enterprise, and showing what happened to Captain Pike after all those years. So, which was that was kind of clever to bring back the pilot episode into the show and then make a spin-off episode. But anyway, I don't want to confuse you. The point is, so Captain Kirk is my favorite. But like I said, it's Picard, Cisco, Janeway, Pike. Um, then there's also the guy from the show Enterprise. I forgot his name, but I liked him as well. Flip side, flip side is funny. I'm not gonna say that though. GJ says anytime a Borg episode came on, I made time for it because it was guaranteed entertainment. Some of them, after a while, some of it got annoying. But yeah, the the Borg, when I was a kid, when I watched it, every time there was a Borg episode, it scared me, because like it seemed like the Borg episodes would be like a time where people really die. Also, all the Klingon on Star Trek the Next Generation. Not so much the original series, but they were minor villains in the original series. They became more popular villains in the movies. But anyway, back to Star Wars. So yes, Episode 4 is the first movie, but again, when it first came out, it wasn't called Episode 4. So your friend confused you by telling you that. I would just say watch Star Trek: A New Hope. That's the first movie. Then you watch the second, Empire Strikes Back. Then you watch Return of the Jedi. Like that's how I got my wife into Star Wars because I let her watch the first three movies with me, and let's just say by the second movie she was hooked. So GJC says Will Wheaton should have a movie now where he made it to captain. Well, they did show him in the last Next Generation movie when they showed him. I don't think, but I think he left. If I remember correctly, I think he left Starfleet. I used to think all the different aliens in Star Trek represented different cultures in real life based on stereotypes. Nah, I mean, maybe in the original series there was definitely aliens who were based on different cultures here in America, here in real life, but there wasn't a one to one sort of thing. So, like for instance, the Vulcans were more or less considered to be like Jewish, which makes sense because both William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy are of Serbian Jewish descent, so that makes sense. Um, but yeah, so like the Vulcans were kind of sort of Jewish. Some people thought Chinese, but I think more or less the Vulcans were considered Jewish people. Um, the Klingons were considered Russians. Um, Not sure about the Romulans, but it was like a one to one. I said there wasn't like a one to one correspondence between any particular alien species and actual ethnicities and cultures here, although you can see some overlap. Like I said, Klingons clearly representing like Russians or the Soviet Union at the time, and Vulcans kind of representing Jewish people in a flattering way, not in an anti-Semitic way, but actually in a flattering way. Um, and and some other cultures, the but it seemed like you're more no, the Ferengi were not Jewish. They were not. You I think you've only watched the Next Generation. You haven't watched the original series, so I think you need to watch the original series before you go into the Next Generation. The Ferengi were not Jewish. Gene Roddenberry actually stated clearly what the Ferengi were. The Ferengi were meant to represent 20th century 20th century humans. That's what they were meant to represent. They were basically a mockery of how aver that it was. He was basically poking fun at how we were in the 20th century. The avarice, the greed and avarice, pettiness of humanity in our timeline, in our so the Ferengi were not meant to be Jewish, and that would be rude because that would be very anti-Semitic to put picture them that way. That is a that is something that is a stereotype of Jewish people that goes all the way back to medieval times. The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. When you look at Gargamel from the Smurfs, he's a cartoon portrayal of the anti-Semitic views of Jewish people stemming from the Middle Ages. Yeah, I'm not coming to any religion, my friend. You can drop a super chat though, because Islam ain't got shit to do with this fucking topic. Because it has nothing to do with this topic. Yeah, Smurfs was heavily anti-Semitic. Gargamel was a depiction of a medieval Jewish man, which looked very much like the Merchant of Venice. If you don't know your Shakespeare, you should read it. You should read up on it or check out the Cliff Notes or maybe Wikipedia. Then there was his rival Hagatha. another medieval Jewish depiction of a medieval Jewish woman. His cat was named Azrael, and then um, there was also anti-Semitic depiction of a Muslim man in Smurfs, who was Gargamel's mentor. I forgot his mentor's name, but he was supposed to be like a medieval Muslim man, probably representing like a Turkish man or more. All of that was pretty racist and anti-Semitic. By the way, anti-Semitic can refer to both Jews and Arabs. So, although some people will say anti-Islamic to refer to that specifically about Arabic people, but in any case, Smurfs was. I used to love the Smurfs too. I still do like them, but yeah, uh, Gargamel was very much the Merchant of Venice portrayed in the cartoon. What's up, Miss Nito? But anyway, guys, to clarify, because I am a true Trekkie, so I can't speak for GJC. He obviously likes Star Trek: The Next Generation, but I can't say that he's a Trekkie if he's never watched the original series. Like I said, the Vulcans were meant to be more or less a depiction of Jewish people, not the Ferengi. The Klingons were meant to be more or less Russians. Um, there was a race, two races of people in this one planet that were half black, half white, and that whole planet was meant to talk about the the divide between black and white people in America in the '60s. It was very cleverly done, but Gene Roddenberry used to actually use. This is why people like Star Trek, and think it's better than Star Wars, because they used to actually cover a lot of ethical topics hidden within science fiction. That was the whole shtick of Star Trek, is that they actually covered a lot of different ethical and conceptual issues disguised as science fiction. No, the Borg weren't Soviets. I don't think the Borg. I think the Borg just represented fascism. Or no, or fascism, or some other variant of totalitarianism. That's what the Borg represented. But yeah, like I said, the Ferengi was actually a mockery of humanity. That's literally, it was showing like in the future how we have evolved to beyond the pettiness of 20th century human culture. The Ferengi was a mockery of 20th century culture. That's actually why Gene Roddenberry created them. They were actually supposed to be the main villains of Star Trek Next Generation, but after that first episode, he and the other producers realized that they were actually too buffoonish to play the main villains. So instead, they just became comical type bad guys to not take seriously. And again, they were a depiction of 20th century humans, to show, basically just to show our pettiness and our level of avarice. So, but I can. You said it wasn't the first interaction. Yeah, between Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura. So technically, it wasn't the first interracial one, but it's recognized nowadays as the first interracial kiss on TV. But there were others. But it's recognized now as the first interracial kiss. But there were others in the past. But I'm going to give Star Trek its due for that, because at least with them, it was deliberately done to be provocative. So Flip side says it's crazy how there was so much hidden stuff in Star Wars too. What do you mean? Like you mean like moral messages or other stuff? Listening to this is all just watch the surprise party. Happy birthday, Mrs. Contrarian. I hope you have or had an awesome day. It looked like she had fun. I haven't seen her smile that much since the last time we went on vacation together. So it looked like she had fun. Plus her family had fun too. Like all the little cousins, the little kids, they were having fun. Her sisters and aunties, um, they were having fun, and I think her and some of her male cousins were there too. And Mrs. Contreras says, "Thank you, Mrs. Needle." Mrs. says, "Make me happy to see." You're very welcome, Mrs. Contrarian. She needs her own channel, doesn't she? Or she can just post more on here, but we might have to give her her own channel. And then, like I said, it'll probably get monetized in like a matter of months, especially if she shows all her traveling stuff she's done. If she had recorded all the stuff she's done, that would be so much content. But flip side says, yeah, just hidden meanings and stuff. Um, I don't know. Star Wars, a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of hidden meanings, but there's a lot of. I think there's a lot of um, stuff that George Lucas has borrowed from other properties in the past, like Dune and the Akira movies, his Japanese revenge movies, as well as the spaghetti westerns of the 60s and 70s. And also, he borrowed heavily from the space operas of the 30s and 40s, like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. Because I believe at one point George Lucas was even going to make like a Flash Gordon movie, but that ended up being made by someone else in 1980. He said the way it was released in reverse chronology. Not really. So it the if you look at Star Wars, the original movie, it, that was the original story. Like if you look at the like if you can like there's you can Google like they showed like the original scripts, and I have the book that was actually released a year earlier than the movie because the movie was actually released later than George Lucas originally intended. He originally intended it to be released in 76. So the book still came out in 76 and it says The Adventures of Luke Skywalker. So the original movies were always intended to be about Luke Skywalker. And George Lucas always said he had in mind that he wanted to do a prequel movies to explain the fall of Darth Vader. But again, that came later because when he originally released Star Wars, he didn't originally intend Darth Vader to be Luke Skywalker's father. That that idea came to him later. So the prequel, so it wasn't intentionally done to have it released 4, 5, and 6, then one, two, three, and then of course 7, 8, 9, which I don't even count, but that's a different topic. Miss Nina says you gotta cut the material though. It's a lot of work, but if you want to do it, Miss Contrarian, go for it. No, I think she still already has a lot of content that she can release. It's just up to her whether she, wants to do it. But I think she still has a lot of stuff that she could actually like load, edit, and load, and have people watch if she wanted. Mrs. Contrarian said it was Mr. Contrarian's most successful surprise, as I had no clue on what was happening. Luckily, because her family almost ruined it. Her because one of her best friends and was in contact with me because I invited her to come, and she actually stayed with Mrs. Contrarian for the weekend. Mrs. Contrarian had no idea why she was staying, but she was staying so that she could hang out with her for the birthday party. And she messaged me. She was like, her family almost ruined the surprise because they keep mentioning Jolly Bees, and every time they say it, they keep looking at each other weird, like giving each other the side eye. I'm like, oh no. I was like, don't let them ruin it, please. And she started laughing. She's like, no, I got you. She's like, yeah, they're just so excited. That's why it's hard for them to keep it bottled up. I was like, yeah, but it's not. I was like, they got to remember the surprise is for her. So, you know, luckily they didn't ruin it. Flip side say, yep, I love the Westerns. Yep, old Flash. Thank you, GJC. I appreciate that a lot, man. Um, so like I was saying, GJC. So you can get into Star Trek. It's actually not hard at all. Um, I think it's hard to. I think it would actually be harder to get into Star Trek than Star Wars. But you already know Star Trek, at least the Next Generation. Um, like I said, it was easy. Like episodes 4, 5, and 6 are actually the first three movies, so it's not confusing at all. It's just confusing now after they made prequel movies that those became episodes 4, 5, and 6. Um, and then the prequels became 1, 2, and 3. And yes, I know people are gonna say, well, no, if you look at the subtitle, when it scrolls down, it's gonna say chapter 4 and chapter 5. I get it. I know I get it. But that's because, like I said, George Lucas always had in mind that he was going to do prequel movies, if the but that was only if the first three movies were successful. If the first movies weren't successful, he would have never been able to make the prequels. So, um, but yeah, it's not confusing. Just watch the first three movies: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. After you watch those three, if you're not interested, then that's cool beans, right? But I would say give the first three movies a chance. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Don't mind the numbers of the movie episodes 4, 5, and 6. Like that that confuses people, and rightfully so. Because if I didn't know about any movie franchise and someone said, "Hey, you gotta watch these movies, but you gotta watch 4, 5, and 6 first," I'd be like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" Like that happens in anime too, GJC. Like you've ever like had someone like recommend like watching an anime, and they was like, actually watch this first. Don't watch they would tell you, don't watch the first series first. Actually watch this series, then go back and watch the original series because it'll make more sense. I've heard people do that in anime, and that's confusing. Like with what's full like with what's it called, Full Metal Alchemist. When I've heard people say, no, you should watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood first instead of watching the original series, because Full Metal Brotherhood state is more loyal to the manga than the original series was. So stuff like that would confuse people. Mr. Neal says, haha, Mrs. Contrarian. He said he almost got busted with his surprise. Happy it worked out. But guys, look, I just want y'all to see GJC gave me a super a super sticker here, so thank you. Miss Nia says that's what happens when you're overexcited and you really got to watch your mouth. I know, right? I was joking with one of my friends. I was like, Mrs. Contrarian family are like good people, but you can't commit crimes with them because they would they would buckle under pressure. Miss Neal says, just check the topic. I guess it's about spoiling yourself as an adult with indulging into like Star Trek and such. Not just Star Trek. I'm just talking about Star Trek and Star Wars, but I'm gonna get into everything in general, Miss Needle. I just didn't have a chance yet because I was answering the comments. Ms. Contrarian says, I noticed hints here and there, but I didn't want to expect anything. But I just thought my best friend and I were just hanging out at the mall, so I wore plain old clothes. That was my first time ever doing a super chat. That's what's up. I'm flattered. Thank you. I'm flattered that I was your first super chat. That's awesome, man. Thank you. But so getting back into it more generally, GJC. So when I'm talking about healing and spoiling your inner child, I don't mean just like Star Wars. Like for me, Star Wars is a big thing, but this was the answer, Liam, from yesterday. If you were, I think you were still in the chat when Liam was asking about my fascination with Star Wars, and he said it seems a bit cultish. And I was saying, look, so George Lucas intentionally made Star Wars franchise to to for 12-year-old boys, and he wanted to instill in them a sense of spirituality. And like I said, I guess that worked because there's actually a Jedi religion now. It's called Jedi realism, which is an actual bona fide church, so but when I'm saying, but it doesn't have to be Star Wars. It could be anything. Like you said, you were into Simpsons, wrestling, and mob movies. I wasn't really into mob movies until I was a teenager. But as a little kid, like I said, I was into Star Trek, Star Wars, um, anime, classic Nintendo, toys, all the like action shows of the time, like 18 and Knight Rider and Airwolf, um, stuff like that. Oh, thank Mrs. Contreras says my inner child still all smiles right now. See, Mrs. Contreras, you thought I wasn't paying attention when we had that random. Every time, everything you tell me, I actually remember this stuff, even if I may not acknowledge it. But I remember us talking like a month or two ago, and you was like, I really would want a Jollibee party or McDonald's party because I was telling you, how McDonald's parties were cool as a kid, and you were saying, hey, I really want one now. And I was like, which one you want more, McDonald's or Jollibee's? I was like, for me, it would be McDonald's. And you was like, no, for me, Jollibee's. You was like, I like McDonald's too, but Jollibee's more. And I was like, all right, cool. I was like, we'll see. And I left it at that. And after that chat, I went into, you know, like, all right, let me put some money away so we can actually do the party. So, but I didn't tell you that. My generation was Saved by the Bell, Fresh Prince, Boy Meets World. Definitely Saved by the Bell for me as well. Fresh Prince as well. Nowadays, I can't. Most of those shows I can't watch like that, but I liked all of them. Boy Meets World, I was a little bit old. I watched some of Boy Meets World, but I kind of aged out of it by the time it progressed into the later seasons. But Topanga was really cute. But Boy Meets World, like Fred, like the actor who played in it was Fred Savage's younger brother. So I grew up on his older brother who did Wonder Years. That was my show, Wonder Years, and then later on his brother did a similar show, Boy Meets World, but it was his show was more of a comedy where Wonder Years was more of a drama. So in Boy Meets World you had Topanga, um, and Wonder Years you had Wendy Cooper. DJC says, Happy birthday to Mrs. Contrarian. I'm craving Jollibees now. I know, right? So, oh, I didn't tell you, Mahal. Like, so next week I'm going with my friend Marcus, the one who came with me to Maryland Day to my alma mater, because we both went to University of Maryland, graduated from there, and then we also know each other from high school all the way back to the ninth grade. Um, so we all met up, and he met Quest too, and we are supposed to hang out at this. I told him let's try out Jollibee's because he's never had Filipino food, and then several weeks ago he decided to go to one of his coworkers' pool parties, and he got to try some Filipino food out, and they told him, "Hey, yeah, you should go to Jollibee's. It's legit." So he was like, all right, let's do it, because we were gonna do it this weekend, but he said he didn't have a lot of time. So I was like, no, let's do it next weekend when you have all day off. So he has all day off next Saturday. So we're gonna go to Jollibee in Wheaton, Maryland. For people who don't know, Wheaton, Maryland is in the DC suburbs. It's in Montgomery County. So that's the closest Jollibee there is to me. The next closest would be um, like North Virginia, still in the DC suburbs, or farther out. And beyond that, I would have to go to New Jersey. I'm not driving 3 hours away just to go to Jollibee. Like, I'm not like Harold and Kumar. I'm not driving 3 hours out just for some fast food. Mrs. Contrarian said that's because Jollibee dances better than Ronald. Donald doesn't even dance anymore. Donald, I mean, excuse me, not Donald, Ronald. Ronald danced back in the 80s. And I don't think and Ronald didn't even dance at the parties. He just came out and took pictures and said hi to everyone. Well, not, he didn't use his real voice, but he just came out and took pictures with everyone and greeted the children. He didn't dance. Like, Jollibee is a much better mascot than Ronald. Like, Ronald doesn't get to dance and all that stuff. He just comes out to greet people. Jollibee will actually Jollibee will actually come out and start twerking. Mr. Contreras says, "Thank you, J.A.C." He said, "Oh, and J.A.C also said, I forgot Family Matters. How could you Family? It seemed like Family Matters was like when it reigned supreme. It seemed like it was on for like 20 years. It was on for so long because it was on from like the 80s up until like I think like 98. I think it ended in like 98. Like by the time it ended, I had stopped watching it for many years. And they've been trying to do a reunion the same way they did with what's that other show? Um, the one with the Olsen twins. Like they did a reunion show for them on Netflix, which I heard wasn't that good. But and the Olsen twins didn't come back for the show either, but everyone else did. Um, but yeah, they've been talking about doing a reunion show for Family Matters too. When it first came out, it was good, but then it quickly turned into being completely just about Stephen Urkel. Plus, I didn't like being a black nerd myself. I didn't like this depiction of black nerds because Stephen Urkel seemed more of a mockery of black nerds than a celebration of black nerds. Like Dwayne Wayne from A Different World was a celebration of black nerds, whereas Stephen Urkel was a mockery. Plus, he was a simp. Like he had a woman who looked way better than Laura, and he kept dogging her to be with Laura. And Laura didn't even like him. Laura didn't like him till he converted himself to Stefan Urkel, and she kept making him turn into Stefan Urkel to be attracted to him. So he had to literally change his DNA and personality just to be with her. Like that's some simp stuff right there. But like the first couple of seasons were better before it was all obsessed about Steven. I mean uh, about Steve Urkel. But they used to do crazy stuff with the family on that show because like remember at first it was the younger sister disappeared. She walked upstairs and she disappeared, and later she ended up doing porn, right? Then she wasn't the only one to disappear. Then the the aunt disappeared. They explained her like she had to move or whatever. So at least they gave her explanation why she left. And then her son Richie disappeared off the show. I don't know if they explained that he moved with his mom or whatever, which would have been cool, but it didn't make sense that his friends were still coming over the house after he left. Then the grandmother left. They didn't explain why the grandmother left because uh, they didn't. I don't know how they wrote her off the show, but it's not like she died. It would have made sense if like she died on the show, but she didn't die. She just vanished from the show. I'm like, so they just write people off the show and don't give any explanations? That was whack. Like the, the sister disappears, the grandmother disappears, the aunt disappears, the aunt's son disappears. So that show was crazy. GJC's is Carl the Dad confronting the two racist cops was so intense. Yeah. Did you also notice GJC that every part that I forgot the actor's real name that plays Carl, but every part he's ever played in a movie has been a cop. He played a cop in Ghostbusters. A lot of people don't remember he played in Ghostbusters as a cop for the first time. He played in obviously Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 2. And it was another movie. I'm trying to remember. It was either, I think it was like a Schwarzenegger movie or a Stallone movie, something like that. He played a cop too. It's called Chuck Cunningham syndrome when a sitcom writes off a character with no explanation originated in Happy Days. Oh, okay. I didn't know they had a word for it, but that makes sense. Yeah, the sisters. So what happened behind the scenes was that the the actor who played the sister to Eddie and Laura, her contract was up for renegotiation, and her parents wanted more money. The producers, like the showrunners, refused to pay them more money, so they wrote her off the show. And instead of so they just literally had her walk upstairs one day, and that was the end of her. Instead of giving an explanation, like they didn't kill her off the show, they didn't have her going to a different place. It would have been hard to. It could have been an easy way to explain that person's absence, but they didn't even try. So, and one of the things they have argued for the reunion show was that the actress who plays the mom says she's not doing it unless they let let the girl who played her daughter return to the show for the reunion. I agree with that. That actually showed that actually showed some spirit there. I was surprised. Plus, the funny thing is, the show revolved around Steve Urkel. Originally, it was centered around the family, like Carl and the brother and Laura. But the original person it should have been centered on was actually the mother. The mother was actually the person responsible for the show because it was a spinoff of Perfect Strangers. Like I don't know too many people remember that, but she was originally a character on Perfect Strangers, and they made a spinoff show about her family. But she was the least important person on the show. Said Grandma Winslow was a gem. Yeah. But anyway, so I don't want to get too caught in talking about either Star Wars or Family Matters. So the point is, like I said, for a lot of older adults, nostalgia for things they grew up with as kids is a way of spoiling or healing their inner child. Things that they didn't get, like a lot of the collectibles I buy are stuff that I never had as a kid, or the stuff that I no longer had because one of the things that happened was I never even I lost most of those toys and things I had as a kid because when we moved from Chicago, um, I think my mother and stepfather, were fighting at the time, so they just left in a hurry and literally left a ton of stuff at that house and didn't return. So someone found had like a treasure trove of stuff in that house. Um, so the only toys I had were the stuff I had here in this very house here, my grandmother's house. But all my other stuff was left like tons and tons of toys and books and other puzzles and all sorts of stuff. And so, as an adult, a lot of Gen X have clung to the stuff that they love as kids, whether it's the cartoons, whether it's the toys, whether it's the comic books, whether it's movies like Star Wars. For Mrs. Contrarian, it was having a Jollibee birthday party, something she never got to have as a kid. So she got to experience that. She's not an older adult like I am, but still a lot of adults are starting to do things that they find is makes them happy makes the little kid in them happy. There have been some people trying to say that this is uh, the infantilizing of adults nowadays, but I think some people just need to S a D, if you catch what I'm saying, because how are you gonna complain that adults are doing stuff that are childish, that's not hurting anyone? It's like, let people live. So they want to collect toy vintage toys, let them be. They want to buy comic books, let them be. They want to go to a Marvel or DC or Star Wars movie, let them be. Like, when did these are these this is mostly coming from boomers and very and like far right wing people who are saying, oh well, adults who are into these sort of things are being infantilized. Okay, well, we also live longer and look younger than you motherfuckers too, so so whatever. Seem like it's working. I mean, have you guys seen a 30-year-old from the 70s compared to a 30-year-old now? Just saying. And I'm 46, so but yeah, it's crazy that, people doing stuff that please the inner child is such a it seems such a bother to people. Like, oh, they're adults are being infantilized. So what? Like, they're still paying like they're still paying bills. They're still working. What's the issue? DJC says same here. I moved out as a teenager as my parents were being evicted. House was cleaned out by workers, and I lost a lot of that stuff. That sucks, man. That sucks. And this is why you're still in Canada, right? Like, this wasn't somewhere else. Yes, we left Chicago when I was 13, and it was like in the beginning of the it was in the first semester of eighth grade for me. Like, for that 5 or 6 years of I've lived in Chicago, so that was my home. Maryland didn't feel like home anymore. Like, Maryland, it was just somewhere I came to for the summer, like for summer vacation. But Chicago was home. I had my best friend there, had all my stuff there, I was situated there. I never thought we would be moving. Like, we moved, but we were moved to like another city or another town. We weren't moving from like state to state. But by the time I was 13, we moved from there. And then a year later, we moved to Philly and only stayed like half a year just to move back to Baltimore because my mother and stepfather weren't getting along. Then they got a place right outside of Philly in Delaware, and Bear, Delaware, and but we were still living halfway between Delaware and Baltimore. So we, my mother and I, were still. So she would commute to work in Baltimore. I would commute to school, and half the week we would spend in Baltimore and half the week in Delaware, and I hated it so much. Then my last year of high school, they told me, well, where she was moving permanently to Delaware, and wouldn't be commuting back and forth. So I decided to live with my father in the DC suburbs, and I loved it so much out there that I was mad that I didn't spend my whole 4 years of high school out there, because the DC suburbs was much superior to Baltimore. One, I didn't have to commute. Two, I didn't have to deal with fighting between my parents. Three, it was it's a, a higher class neighborhood and school. So, but anyway, a lot of us grew up with things going on in our lives, and so if we can heal our inner child by doing the things we couldn't do as children, I don't care if it's being called the adults being infantilized. I think it's just fun. It's just kid adults with now money to live their lives they wanted as kids. Like, I don't see a problem with it. And I think it is therapeutic. J.A.C says, yeah, Canada, different cities, both parents were addicts and gamblers, so it is what it is. I do keep some traditions alive for my kids from the good times of my childhood, Christmas stuff, for example. That's cool, man. I'm sorry you went through that. Sound like you might have probably had a rougher time than I did as a child. Like my early childhood was not great, but it was decent. Um, it was not until my teenage years that things really started to spiral. But I can definitely see. And Christmas was definitely cool again until I was about 13. By the time I was 13, I just stopped liking Christmas that much. Like the best Christmas I had, you know, as a teenager or an adult was actually spending it with Mrs. Contrarian in the Philippines. That was really fun. Um, Experiencing the Christmas season over there. Sergeant, what's up, man? Um, but yeah, I would definitely keep up Christmas with my kids, even though I'm not even religious. But yeah, I would definitely keep up Christmas. Um, Plus, it would be kind of interesting during Thanksgiving in the Philippines because they don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but there are enough Americans living there that you can find places that will actually cook Thanksgiving dinners there because it might be hard for my wife to cook a turkey there. We don't have a oven that can fit that could fit the size of a turkey, and she would have to learn all the. I'm pretty sure she could, but she would have to learn how to cook one. Thanks, Mrs. Contrarian, for getting rid of that troll. Mrs. Contrarian is moderating, so she doesn't pull up with a lot. She puts up like she has a lower tolerance than I do for trolls. He said they'll celebrate Thanksgiving in the Philippines. Filipinos find a way to party. Well, it would be expensive for them though, the turkey and all of that. So not the average Filipino probably wouldn't be able to afford to do a big Thanksgiving dinner. But no, so a lot of American expats, um, who have like Filipino wives or whatever, they often will go to these places where they can have Thanksgiving dinner. Because I have a friend of mine who also lives out there. He told me of restaurants to do it, and I actually looked up some places that sell turkeys. So you can definitely celebrate Thanksgiving out there. I don't know how I look like LeBron. I don't think I remotely look like LeBron. I don't have the beard. I don't have the hairline. Well, the absence of hairline. um, we look literally nothing alike. You must be white. Well, I'm not going to say you're white. I just think you don't have a good judgment of likenesses because I have none of my white friends would even say I look like LeBron. I know he's balding. I'm not balding. I just keep my hair cut close because I'm not one of these little Fanuc Gen Zs. You're probably some Gen Z dude. You guys like to have long ass hair and look like girls. I don't. I cut my hair close. I'm not balding. It's called a Caesar cut, dumbass. Mr. Contrarian, you can edit him out. He's getting on my nerves. You can ban him or time him out. Unless he's about to drop a super chat, he ain't got shit to say to me. Right. The sergeant, he doesn't know. Like, and every Gen Z has like the same hairstyle. Like they either had that little broccoli haircut, or or they have the dreads slid to the side with half their head shaved, looking very Diddy-ish. I'll say that. I was in 6 years, almost seven, about six and a half years. He said they had the feather cut, the turkey feather cut with bangs, right? You, you know what I'm talking about? Like it's become like I don't know, I don't even know what they call a hairstyle, but it's like braids or twists or dreads, and then they have it lopped to the side like bangs, like bangs, exactly like he said that. I guess it is called the turkey feather cut. I don't know, but they literally even had someone in Star Wars with that hairstyle, and I'm like, oh God, this sucks. In the that new show called The Acolyte, they had a Jedi who actually was looking like that. And of course and I have nothing against gay people, but of course in real life the actor is gay. I was like, well, that explains the hairstyle. But like they all look like that now, so you can't even tell because they're all like low testosterone, so they're effeminate. So because they're so effeminate, they they think masculine men are weird. Gen Alpha hates ankle socks. My son wants to wear tall socks with slippers, and it upsets me. The funny thing is, I just saw that on Facebook like a few days ago. They were saying that, but they said Gen Z though. They didn't say Gen Alpha, but they were saying like Gen Z and probably Gen Alpha as well. They were saying they can tell older adults by their socks because they don't like ankle socks. So the generations I grew up, it was different because like at some point, like you had to wear ankle socks, but when I was in DC, they love slouch socks, so they loved the big socks pulled all the way up, and then they would sometimes wear multiple slouch socks on at the same time, so it looked like they were wearing stockings. So depending on where you grew up, because depending on where you grew up, like in the '90s, it was either the ankle socks or like I said in the DC area, it was all about the slouch socks. And then of course everyone got teased if they wore Bobos. Like Bobos, they make your feet feel fine. Bobos, they cost $1.99. Bobos. Sorry, says yeah, haven't seen that one yet. I didn't like Ahsoka's show. I didn't either. That's when I gave up. Sergeant literally was Ahsoka because I was hyped for that show. Like when they first advertised it, um, 2 years ago, they was like, we're gonna make a spinoff of show just about Ahsoka. After how well it she did in the Mandalorian, so I'm thinking it was gonna have the same quality as the Mandalorian, but the show did not have the same quality as Mandalorian. If anything, it was just a live action version of Star Wars Rebels. Like instead of it being about Ahsoka, it was basically just about all the characters from Star Wars Rebels. It it was just basically another season of Star Wars Rebels live action version. All right, I'm just gonna ignore people saying you look like X, Y, and Z. Like if that's the most you can think of, suck a dick. It's like unless you dropping a super chat, I don't want to care who you think I look like. I really literally don't care. Sergeant says my cousin would wear long socks but fold them over into shoeless ankle socks. That was late '90s. Yeah, or you remember how some people like what I started doing because I saw other people like in places like New York, New Jersey, and Philly doing it. Is that instead of wearing ankle socks, we would just wear the regular athletic socks, and then just push them all the way down. So I started doing that, but I couldn't, like, when I lived in the DC area, I just couldn't get into the slouch socks things. I was like, that just looks uncomfortable during the summer. I'm like, it's like 90 degrees outside, and you got these hot ass slouch socks. And like I said, some of them were wearing two pairs of slouch socks at the same time. Like, nah, man, that's too hot for that. Sergeant says, yeah, Ahsoka was super underwhelming. Facts. Facts. That's what I say. I would not recommend watching Acolyte. I did not watch it. What I ended up doing was I went to like film reviews of people whom I trust, like the Critical Drinker and others, like yeah, Critical Drinker and Ryan Cannell and this guy who calls himself Thor Skywalker, and get and I would just get the reviews of each episode, and they were bad. And even on Rotten Tomatoes, the score for the show is so bad on the Acolyte, it actually is lower than the Star Wars Holiday Special. And the Star Wars Holiday Special was considered the worst thing Star Wars has ever made. Even George Lucas said he regretted making it in '78. But it scored a lower score than the Holiday Special, which tells you just how bad the Acolyte is. Because the Holiday Special is unwatchable. Like, they don't even have the Holiday Special on Disney Plus. That's how bad it is. But yeah, hold up. Um, oh, I didn't. I missed one of these comments you left, Sergeant. You said you still have your place there. Yeah, we if you're talking about the Philippines, yeah, we have a house in the Philippines in Bulacan. We don't have my condo anymore because um her her family needed a new place to stay, so we ended up buying a house, and we abandoned the condo because it was no point in having the condo and the house. So if I go back, I might buy a condo so we can be closer to the Metro Manila area. But we were just renting a condo at the time, so we just let that go and bought the house. Sergeant says like Disney kept it going, but so much so that they are going to miss out on a larger percentage of their spinoffs. Disney to me at this point is like a real life version of Vought from The Boys. Like Disney is probably the most like Vought in real life of any like multimedia company. If you get the reference from watching The Boys, if not, I highly recommend it. At least the first three seasons. Seasons 4 and 5 are throwaways. I mean, sorry, season 4 is a throwaway, and season 5, whenever they make that, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be pretty bad too. But season 4 was pretty bad. This one that just ended. The first three seasons were decent. Oh, you don't know the reference? Yeah, Vought is like so. The Boys is based on a comic book series by this guy who actually hates superheroes. So in his books, the superheroes are actually bad guys. And what happens is they're not even doing like superhero stuff. Like they just have superpowers because they were as babies injected with this chemical that gives them super human abilities. And this company has basically marketed them as superheroes and just uses them for the licensing to make movies and merchandise and stuff like that. But they don't actually go out doing anything heroic unless it's like pretend, like like something made up pretend like they're actually doing something heroic just to boost their marketability. It's a very cynical look at superheroes. But it's very interesting on the show because the show can be very brutal and have a lot of like stuff that's almost like porn like in it. And but The problem is after like season two, like season three and four start to become really political, so it kind of drags down the show, especially like season four. But it's actually worth it's worth checking out. You'll probably like it. He said, oh, "Okay, gotcha. That sounds very familiar, almost like another show I used to watch, but definitely not the same." Then you also got Invincible. People have started making jokes that Amazon likes to make superhero shows that make like evil superheroes and especially evil Superman because Jeff Bezos is basically Lex Luthor in real life. But yeah, The Boys would be worth checking out. I would say watch the first season. If you don't like the first season, then you probably wouldn't like the rest of the series. But if you like the first season, you'll probably like the next couple of seasons. And when you watch it, you'll get the connection between Vought and Disney. So, um, but yeah, like I said, so uh, healing your inner child can be, like I said, being someone who likes going to toy and comic book conventions to buy vintage toys. Also, there's a collector's market just for adults now. Like if you go to like places like Target and Walmart and you go into the toy section, you're more likely to see adult men in those toy sections than actual kids. Most kids don't even buy toys anymore. They just want devices. They don't want toys. They want either devices or games. They don't buy toys. So, and, people are trying to say, "Oh, well, these men in the toy section are creepy." No, they're not. These are just adult men buying stuff that were a part of their childhood. They're not bothering anyone. And like I said, there's a whole toy collectors market just for adults that started back in, I believe, like '94. So when Todd McFarlane released his toy version of Spawn, his Spawn action figure, he geared it towards adults because he knew that kids kids wouldn't be the ones reading his comic book because it's geared for adults. So he made the action figure for like older teenagers or young adults, and his Spawn action figure became the very first in the collectible market for adult toy collectors. So now you have people who are either buying the vintage toys from the stuff from the 70s and 80s or early 90s, or you have people who are buying the collectibles, like the stuff based off the 80s, but made recently, like the Star Wars Black Series or the the Todd McFarlane DC Multiverse action figures, or He-Man the He-Man Classics line, and a whole bunch of other stuff. All the stuff Super Seven makes is basically for adult collectors. Um, NECA Toys makes a lot of stuff, and I can go on and on and on. Miss Neal says spoiling in this economy. Well, when I say spoiling, I don't really mean like spoiling like spending a lot of money, Miss Needle. I mean spoiling as in spoiling your inner child, like doing things that would have pleased your younger self that you couldn't do then, but that you could do now because now you have the money. So as an adult, now you can go buy. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying this is something you're into, but like say when you were little, you were into strawberry shortcake and Rainbow Bright or Care Bears. Now you have the money, you can actually go out and buy these things. So that's what I'm saying, like spoiling your inner child. I did this stuff. It's not just toys, it's like other stuff that I bought that I wanted as a stuff that I wanted like when I was like somewhere between 9 and 13. Now that I can get like I went back and bought a Casio keyboard calculator, the Casio calculator watch. I wanted one of those since I was like 8 or 9. So I finally just went back and bought one, especially after I watched the episode of Big Bang Theory. and one of the actors that plays the astrophysicist Raj had like a Casio calculator watch. I'm like, shoot, I'm gonna get one. So I bought a Casio calculator watch. Um, all sorts of stuff. I bought like um some binoculars because I wanted binoculars when I was like in the Boy Scouts, and also something to look at the stars because I always wanted a telescope. So I bought stellar binoculars. I bought the Swiss Army knife because I always wanted one of those when I was a little kid, especially because I was like again in the Scouts. So stuff like that. Um, I made food that I wanted back then that I couldn't have access to, but now I have my own money to buy whatever I want, so I buy those things. I get endless fruit snacks. So this is what I mean when I say spoiling your inner child. I don't mean spending a lot of money. I just mean buying stuff that you didn't have access to when you were a child that now you can get. So Sergeant says, remind me of Heroes. No, 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 no. The Boys is way. The Boys is a much. Heroes has nothing on The Boys. I'll just tell you that. It's way. I don't want to spoil it for you. It's very graphic. That's what I'll say. The Boys is very graphic, and you'll see like at some points they're taking shots at DC heroes. At other points they're taking shots at Marvel heroes, which is cool. But then they start taking shots at different political views. Um, but yeah, it's way more graphic than Heroes. Miss Nina says, I've always been very restrictive of what to spend money, time, and energy on. Didn't miss anything yet. That was good for you, but yeah, it was a lot of stuff I wanted as a kid that I didn't get. I wanted like I said, I wanted my Power Master Optimus Prime. I never got that, so bought Power Master Optimus Prime as an adult. I wanted my Casio keyboard watch, so I bought that. I wanted the silly putty when I was a kid, so I bought that. I wanted my Omega Brain yo-yo. I had one, then I ended up losing it, so I bought another Omega. I found another Omega Brain yo-yo. I wanted a Rubik's cube. Never had one of those. So I bought that. There's a bunch of action figures that I didn't have back then, so I bought those. Or I bought the ones that I lost when I moved away from Chicago. Um, what else? Um, oh, I don't know. Then I bought like the movies I was into back when I was a kid, so I just bought those on DVD because I'd rather have a hard copy than just rely on having a subscription to some streaming platform where they can just take that show or movie off and I won't have access to it again. So I'd rather have a hard copy version of my favorite movies. So stuff like that. Sergeant says, yeah, I know it's wild. I can't afford it, but I really want to rebuy all my childhood toys and Legos, stuff like that. So the way I do it, Sergeant, is I don't try to rebuy everything I had as a kid. I just try to buy everything that I wanted that I didn't have back then. Or if it's something that I did have, it was like something that I lost. So that's why the stuff I have now is different from the toys I had as a kid because these were a lot of the things I didn't have, like like this one of the original Snake Eyes GI Joe action figures. I never had that, so I went out and bought him and stuff like that. So Miss Neal says, Sergeant, that's interesting. You think it's mostly a thing for men? I'm genuinely curious. There's some women that are into collecting and doing stuff, but the collectors market, yeah, that's mostly guys. Like the comic books, the toys. I would say overwhelmingly the majority are guys. There are women who have a sense of nostalgia as well, but their nostalgia is for different stuff than guys. The women, like I said, they might be into different sorts of stuff of nostalgia from their past. but I think this is mainly a guy thing. Sergeant says, I don't know, to be honest, but I feel like my sister just played with dolls, which I don't think she cares as much about as me as a guy does trucks, Legos, etc. I might be off base there though. I don't think you're off base. Guys are more into like physical objects and things like that than women are, so it makes sense that we would be more nostalgic for like actual like tangible things. Whereas I think women are also nostalgic for things in their past too, but these may be more intangible things, like their relationships with people or, um, maybe moments they share with people, things like that. I think they might be more nostalgic for the intangible stuff. We're more nostalgic for the tangible things. That's again, that's a bit of an overgeneralization, but I, I think it has some merit to it. Miss Neal says, I think I grew out of it. There's things I would have liked as a kid, but ever since I got severely ill, I lost interest in basically anything than a few hobbies I have now. That, and maybe because this is more an American thing, Miss Needle, maybe that might be part of it too, because I don't know if there's a huge collector's market for like toys and comic books in Europe as there is in the US. Because normally all of like channels that I see on YouTube or stuff that I see on like Facebook and Instagram geared towards like nostalgia for the 80s and 90s and people who like collecting. Usually all this stuff is centered in America, so I don't even know if this sort of thing extends to Europe. This might be a probably just an American thing. Emily says, "Hi, remember me? I do remember you, Emily." And Miss Nina said, "I guess I got used to it." And she says, "Sergeant, yeah, that's what I think about too. I wouldn't want to buy anything of my childhood toys now." Mrs. Contrarian says, Miss Needle, I'm getting curious now about that too. I'm not interested in buying any of my childhood toys except for the Powerpuff Girls Funko Pop that Mr. Contrarian got me. Miss Needle says, no, there's collectors here too, I think, but definitely a cultural thing too. Yeah, like I said, it's more of it's definitely a Western thing, but I think it's more centered in America because again, most of these things came out of American IPs at the time. He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers, GoBots, Star Wars, Star Trek. Um, you know, all these things. Most of these were American-based IPs, except for the anime. But um, for the most, Star Wars, no, I've seen Star Wars heavily in the UK and other places, and they even had their own line of toys that were um, basically the same as Kenner, but under a different licensing than Kenner through Lucasfilm at the time. But this is mostly a guy thing, I think. Sergeant says, I remember the Furbies. I never buy one of those again. They never turned off, reminded me of Gremlins. The funny thing is, so I don't know if you remember, Sergeant. So they ended up actually making a Furby that was a Mogwai just because people kept saying that the Furbies reminded them of the Gremlins. So that they ended up actually making a Gremlin Mogwai Furby. But yeah, those were popular in the 90s. Um, Miss Needle says, yeah, Mrs. Contrain, I know it's how you grow up when you're always anxious that your family might starve. You will become very restrictive as a kid, I think. Mrs. Contrain says, I would still like to get a drum set though when we have a bigger space in the house. Oh boy, you don't mean like a full. That would be loud. Oh man, that would be loud. And you know that's gonna set off the dogs too, right? Miss Nita says lots of factors that play into that. Sergeant says, "Oh, cool. I didn't know y'all played instruments." She does. I don't. She also can play the guitar. Miss Nita says, "Ms. Contrarian, um, uh, would it be an electronic one, or an analog?" Miss Nita says, "Sergeant, I'm a musician. Haha." Sergeant says, "I didn't know about that about Furbies." Yeah, so people when the Furbies first came out, people were like, man, this is just a. They was like, this is just a rip off of the Mogwais from Gremlins, and so they ended up actually just making an actual Gizmo Furby at one point. Miss Nina says, Mr. Contrarian, write that down for the next birthday. Haha. I don't know where she would put a drum set though. That's the only thing. Like I could get one for it, but we would need more space. Like we have limited space. We got a lot of people in the house and we got pets. So unless I can buy that second house we were talking about, which actually connects to the house we're in now, then we can do that and I can like knock a hole between the two houses to make them one house and she can have a drum set if she wants, as long as I can put my workout equipment in there too. So, um, but a drum set that yeah, that could take up a lot of space. Miss Neal says, "Oh, Mrs. Katrin, you also play guitar. What?" Sergeant says, "Good chat, y'all. Gotta go for tonight. Have a good one, sir. Thanks, Sergeant. Um, see you the next time around, right?" Miss Neal says, "Put it on the porch outside on the street." Not in the Philippines. Rainy season. Mm-mm. It rains way too much half of the year. It would get ruined. I don't think that will work. I know you was joking. I was just saying we don't even have. It's not like really a porch either. Like it's just a walkway and like, yeah, like just like a walkway to the street. And there's like a little. I guess you. It's not even a stoop. It's like just like I don't know how to explain it. Mr. Katrina says, "Yeah, Miss Needle, I want the analog drums, and yes, I play guitar. That's what I got as a gift for myself on my first paycheck. LOL." Miss Needle says, "But hey, if it gets too loud, you know where to put it." Eh, I'd rather keep it inside because I mean, I don't know instruments like that, but I'm pretty sure like storing it outside would be bad for an instrument. Miss Needle says, "Oh, that's awesome, Mrs. Contrarian. What guitar is it? An acoustic one or electric guitar?" It was definitely acoustic. Wait, do you still have it, Mahal, or does Israel have it? Or did I can't remember you didn't you get an didn't you get another one from Shay or I forgot. So I thought you also got one from Shay and then you gave one to Israel, or I'm not sure how that. Miss Nia says, "Ah, great. There's some nice acoustic ones out there. Do you know the brand or model?" Miss Katrina says, "Yep, I still have it and the one from Shay." Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you gave one away. Or so did Shay just give you hers, or did she sell it to you? Knowing her, she probably sold it to you. But I thought you had gave one to Israel. speaking of, what about your bike? Have you been able to ride that since it seemed like Israel just took that when he was staying at our place and then it just kind of became his? So do you need another bike? I'm not talking about like, you know, the regular bike. No, she didn't lose her possessions. We're talking about her brother. Like, um, he's a he plays the instruments too. And when he was staying over there, I thought she had gave him one of her instruments, but I'm not sure. They should open a rent service. I don't think we have really anything to rent out. I don't think. Missing Trace says my original guitar was borrowed by my brother when we were staying at the condo, and he returned it when we moved to the house, and Shay gave the other guitar to me. Okay, so you now do have both. Or at least he gave it back to you. See, I never knew he gave it back to you when you guys moved to the house. I thought he kept it. See, I remember that, even though it's been a long time. But yeah, I remember that. I don't know about you guys. I'm starting to get tired this past midnight. I'm pretty tired. About to get off. But again, when I'm referring to spoiling or healing your inner child, I'm not just talking about buying things. I'm talking about doing things that would make your younger self happy. It may not be necessarily spending a lot of money. It could be like buying your favorite ice cream as a kid, um, going to see your favorite movies as a kid, um, all sorts of stuff. Maybe hanging out with people you haven't hung out with since you were younger, going places you haven't been to since you were younger, all those sorts of things. It doesn't mean just like spoiling as in like throwing a lot of money at something. It could be relatively low cost to no cost. And some things might be expensive because now it's something you always wanted as a kid, but you never thought you could afford it until now as an adult because you have money. So now you can be like, hey, I can actually do this thing. So Miss Nita says, oh, all right, then have a good night. You both. It was lovely to be here. Till next time. Thank you. And guys, definitely check out the videos of Mrs. Contrarian at her birthday party. Um, just a lot of like, good wholesome fun. Mrs. Contrarian says Miss Nito is a Fender, but I'm sure it's a knockoff by a local guitar maker because it wasn't as expensive as the original. Yes, I know nothing about guitar makes and models, so I'm completely lost. Like the first time I even knew about guitars was watching Purple Rain back in the early '80s with Prince, and I remember he wanted to buy this expensive electric guitar, but he couldn't afford it because he was just like a broke musician in the movie, and so his girlfriend actually went out and bought the guitar for him in the movie. So that's the first time I even thought about like guitars or anything like that. Miss Nita says, haha, I got a Mexican Fender Strat. You guys are talking complete Latin to me. That's, I mean, that's all what they say. No, that's all Greek to me. So I have no, I have no reference for music for musical instruments. But anyway, I'm bringing this to a close. I know Mahal, I know you're busy, right? So you got to get back to work. But you can message me. Hopefully, we'll see if people find those videos interesting. Miss Nina says, and fun fact is that the different price classes are all made in the same place but priced differently. I'm not surprised. So here's something you may or may not know, Miss Needle. This is a completely random fact, but so like pretty much all the sunglasses, about 80% of all sunglasses are all made by the same people, even though they have different, they all come under different companies and different stores sell these different sunglasses. 80% of them are all made by the same people. So all those different glasses you see in these different places where some are like 200, $300, some are just like 10, $20. They're all made by the same people. Like 80% of it all made by the same people. So it doesn't matter whether you go into Lens Crafters or Sun Hut or whatever the eyeglass stores are. They're pretty much all those sunglasses and eyeglasses. 80% of them are made by the same company. Miss Nita says it's crazy. Like an American Stratus 2,000 or more, and a Squire $200 or something. Yeah, like I said, I understand. Miss Nita said wood is different, but the higher price ones are not even better made most of the time. Well, well, anyway, I don't want to get led down a rabbit hole of talking about instruments because I'll be on here another hour or two, and as you can tell, I'm already pretty tired. Miss Contrarian says I got mine for just around $30 about 13 years ago. All right. Well, I mean, you guys can continue this if you if you went on a separate thing. See, this is why Mrs. Contrarian needs her own channel. um, but yeah, we can continue this another day. But I'm gonna go, guys. So Mahal, I'm a check out. Okay. Um, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe you and Miss Nita can connect on another platform if you like. um, but so long, everyone. Thank you again, GJC. I appreciate it, man. And like I said, if you want to start on Star Wars, just to see if it appeals to you, and usually it's on. I don't know about what the Canadian channels are, but usually they're on like TV all the time. I'm pretty sure they got like TNT and TBS out there. But if not, like I said, you can go to like a streaming platform or watch it for free somewhere. New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And if you don't like those, then that's cool. But again, I think you might like them. Mrs. Contrarian says thanks everyone. Sorry guys, we're gonna do this again tomorrow, maybe a little bit earlier, hopefully. All right, but good night to some of you and good day to the rest of you. Take care, guys. Thank you. Yep, definitely be looking forward to you as well, Miss Needle. Thank you.